welcome to another episode of Thick Slices and Deep Cuts. On this evening's episode, I will be discussing and ranking the albums of 70s progressive rockers Emerson, Lake and Palmer, otherwise known as ELP, consisting of basically a supergroup at the time. Greg Lake from King Crimson. He was on those first two Crimson albums, which are classic. His voice is classic. You've got Keith Emerson coming over from The Nice, and Carl Palmer, who was in a band called Atomic Rooster. Well, anyway, in 1970, they got together and formed a power progressive trio, and they had quite a run in the 70s. And by the way, that's the decade. That's what I'll be ranking, is Emerson, Lake and Palmer in the 70s. I'll get to, I guess it was 3 albums they did post 70s, but you know, and I listened to them before this review. I don't own them, and I didn't think it was worth necessarily going into those, but rather to just focus on their heyday, which was the decade of the 70s. And for this ranking, I'll be ranking 8 albums. And so those of you who know Emerson, Lake and Palmer very well will say, well, wait a minute. They only have 7 studio albums in the 70s. Well, there's going to be one surprise pick, and again, I think if you know the band, you're going to know what the surprise pick is. But we'll just get right into it. I own, of these 8 I'm going to rank, I believe I own 6 of the 8. And the only 2 I don't own are the first 2 I'll be discussing. So we'll just get right into it. Coming in at number 8, not going to be a surprise to anyone that knows the band, and I'll put the picture up somewhere. But it's their final album of the 70s, from 1978. I'm going with Love Beach, with the infamous album cover of the guys with their shirts open on the Love Beach, looking like the Bee Gees. And, you know, I went into it, because I've heard the album before, but I went into it this time, I listened to it twice. And I thought, you know what, that album cover's terrible, but, you know, maybe that was just label pressure. I bet there's something on that album. You know, there's going to be good tracks on there. And unfortunately, when you listen to it, it just sounds totally forgettable, somewhat cringeworthy. And this band is known for being very experimental and bombastic, and this album has none of that. This is probably the softest thing they did in the 70s. In fact, it is the softest thing they did in the 70s and up to that point in their career. Basically, side 1, for the most part, is just a bunch of Greg Lake songs. So Greg Lake was always sort of the relief to the craziness. So to the insane experimentation, Greg Lake would give you one nice, catchy radio-type song. And so he pretty much dominates the first side, but the first side, and it's surprising because Pete Sinfield helped with a lot of the lyrics, and he's known for writing incredibly awesome lyrics for King Crimson, among other bands in the 70s. But the lyrics here, I mean, you've got just everything is a cheesy love type song on side 1. You've got, you know, the only songs that are somewhat okay, there's a song called Taste of My Love, but the title kills it. So it's got kind of a pleasant melody, and it's nice enough sounding, but it doesn't really sound like Emerson, Lake and Palmer other than it's Greg Lake's voice, and the lyrics are killing it. For You is okay as well. That's about it. Canario is the only song I was really familiar with before this review. And that's just one of these reimaginings of classical music, which is what Emerson, Lake and Palmer did quite a bit in the 70s. And this one's okay, but it's not as good as other renditions and things, you know, reimaginings that they've done in the past. But I got excited because Keith Emerson basically wrote Memoirs of an Officer and a Gentleman. Bad title, but I saw the 20-minute track length, and I thought, well, they're doing their pop stuff from 78 on side 1, and side 2 they're going to give you classic ELP. And Memoirs of an Officer and a Gentleman is 20 minutes of it's just pleasantly forgettable. It's not exciting. They're like more symphonic at this point in the 70s. A lot of the bombast is dialed back and in favor of like a light string orchestra type thing, which chimes in here and there. But this song never gets very exciting, and it's just totally forgettable, and there was no need for it to be 20 minutes. They could have taken the most memorable or the best pieces of that and boiled it down to half that or a third of that. And so this album's coming in at number 8. I mean, the album cover is hilarious, but I was trying to find a way to find its good qualities, just to go, see, don't judge an album by its cover, but it, in fact, is the worst thing they did, certainly in the 70s. So there you go, coming in at number 8 from 1978, their final album before they disbanded. By the way, they didn't even tour for this. They went into the studio. It's my understanding they went to the Bahamas to record the whole, you know, they're a British band, but they're tax exiles. So they're recording overseas, and it's my understanding that Carl Palmer and Greg Lake did their parts and left the Bahamas and left Keith Emerson to finish the whole thing. And I think nobody wanted to, the band did not want to exist anymore. So they finished the album, sent it into the label, and the band basically disbanded at that point. Obviously they would get together later on, but there you go. So it coming in at number 8 from 78, I've got Love Beach. Okay, coming in at number 7, I'm going to go with from the album before this, from 77, Works, Volume 2. So this was the second to last album they did in the 70s. And, you know, I'll get to the other thing they did in 77, but Works Volume 2 is just a hodgepodge of B-sides and rarities, basically. They just found things that weren't good enough for other albums, and they just compiled them all together and released Works Volume 2. And so if you're, I don't think it's essential listening for, if you're getting into Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I wouldn't start with Works Volume 2. It's just B-sides and rarities. If you want to complete and know everything they did in the 70s, that's great. But it's got 3 songs that they did from a classic album in 73. And those songs are okay, but I can see why they weren't good enough for that album. And that's why they find their home here. So this is literally an album of things that just weren't good enough to make the cut, or just random novelty songs here and there. So, you know, what do you get? You've got Tiger in a Spotlight was apparently one that they liked, and they played it live. It doesn't do much for me. The song Brain Salad Surgery is okay, but it wasn't good enough for the album Brain Salad Surgery. And then the song that I do like from that 73 session, and I had to write it down because it's an instrumental, but the title is When the Apple Blossoms Bloom in the Windmills of Your Mind, I'll Be Your Valentine. That one's kind of weird and cool. You know, Bullfrog's kind of strange and jazzy, but they always, one thing that I really don't care for it seemed to come up a lot in the later half of the 70s. You've got Honky Tonk Train Blues, so you've got just Keith Emerson doing this like ragtime bluesy stuff, and it just, I'm not, when I want to hear ELP, I'm not listening for those types of songs. I Believe in Father Christmas was apparently a Greg Lake single from 75, but they stuck it on this album. So it's not terrible, but it's not essential in any way. I mean, everything on here is something that couldn't make the cut for the most part. So it's not terrible. It's certainly better than Love Beach, and you can probably glean a track or 2 or even 3 off of this that are, you know, that's decent. So there you go. Coming in at number 7 from 1977, Works Volume 2. Okay, so those are the 2 albums that I don't have physical copies of. The rest I do. So here we go. At number 6, I'm going to go also from earlier in 77. I'm going to go with Works Volume 1. So this is a double album. So basically on this one, the band is back. The last studio album they'd done was in 73, and this comes out in 77. So there was almost a 4-year gap. At least 3.5 years between studio albums. And I think the band had basically, after their album in 73, they were basically like, they had been doing so many albums and so many tours nonstop that they were just kind of like, we need a break. And we're tapped out creatively. We just need a break, and we need to refocus and come back. So they come back with Works Volume 1, and this is pretty good. It's, Side 1 is Keith Emerson's side, Side 2 is Greg Lake's side, Side 3 is Carl Palmer's side, and Side 4 they come together as a band and do Fanfare for the Common Man, which is an Aaron Copland, you know, a classical piece that they reimagined. And then they do a 13-minute piece called Pirates. And this album is pretty interesting. It's not. It's definitely flawed and it's not perfect, but it's still interesting and worth checking into. And it's coming in at number 6 of 8. Well, we'll just start with side 1. Keith Emerson's Piano Concerto number 1 is really cool. Like it's just him doing awesome piano melodies, and it's very classical sounding. It's completely classical sounding, and it's really nice and pleasant, and I really dig it. It's probably my single favorite thing on here. It's just one 18-minute, side-long piece. So his piece is good. It's different from old ELP. I mean, there's a 4-year break, so when they come back with Works Volume 1, the beginning of their second phase of the 70s, it's different. I mean, but it's a good piece. It's a little subdued, but it's good. Then side 2, you've got Greg Lake. Lend your love to me tonight. So he's totally in love ballad mode when the band reconvenes. C'est la vie, I do like that song. That's a good one. How'll Be Thy Name's all right. Nobody Loves You Like I Do. I mean, this is a precursor to Love Beach. His side is a total precursor to Love Beach. Closer to Believing. They're all pleasant enough. Greg Lake's vocals are always good, but it's just kind of too sappy. He's getting too sappy at this point. But I do like C'est la vie, Hallowed Be Thy Name is all right. Side 3, Carl Palmer is definitely more so than a drummer, he's a percussionist, and you can hear that all over this side. The Enemy God, it's a reworking of, man, I don't want to say it's Tchaikovsky, it was somebody. Was it Bach? I think it was Bach, he's even older, but he does a very strange song there, which he's doing a play on a Bach song. LA Nights apparently has Joe Walsh of the Eagles doing some slide guitar on it. It's interesting, it's stylistic, it's definitely sounds like 77 stylistically. New Orleans is a little bit more southern bluesy. 2-part Invention in D minor, another Bach thing. Interesting. Food for Your Soul definitely sounds like something you hear in the background of some like 70s crime drama. Kind of jazzy, kind of soulful, all that stuff. And then he does a reworking of the song Tank from their first album. So Carl Palmer's side is pretty interesting. Greg Lake's is kind of pleasant but kind of cheesy, and Emerson's is really nice. The most exciting side, Fanfare for the Common Man, I don't really want to hear that. I mean, it's okay for like if you wanted to do like a 45-second intro, but they do a full song with that. Then you get to this 13-minute song called Pirates. I don't know. It's I wanted it to be more. It's okay. It sounds like it's not that heavy and bombastic, and it's like nice and symphonic with an orchestra, and it just sounds like it was made for a musical or something like that. But it's not bad, and it's certainly when they reconvened, they did 3 things. They did Works Volume 1, Works Volume 2, and Love Beach. I don't think any of these are necessarily essential. If any of them are, I would just get this because it does have some good stuff on here. And I think what makes this even better is it's a double album, so even if you don't like half the stuff, you still get an album's worth of good stuff. Keith Emerson's part is good, most of Carl Palmer's is good, a little bit of Greg Lake's is good, and there are moments in Pirates that are alright. But there you go. At number 6, I'm going with Works Volume 1, the first thing they did after their brief hiatus in the mid-70s. But there you go. At number 6, Works Volume 1 from 77. Okay, at number 5, this is my surprise pick, because it's not a studio album, but it's from 71. It's the 3rd thing they released. It's called Pictures at an Exhibition, where they rework a piece from Mussorgsky, a classical composer, a Russian classical composer. So here we're now in the early phase of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. So they basically had 2 phases, and I just ranked the second half of the 70s, which obviously based on my ranking was, nothing they did after they came back from their break was as good as the 5 things they did at the beginning of their career. And so this was their 3rd release, a live album where they rework Pictures at an Exhibition, but they also throw in their crazy bombastic flair. I think the best, you know, the old castle. It's cool. There's this thing called Promenade, which keeps coming in 3 different times. But you've got the old castle. You've got Greg Lake does it an original. So in the midst of this, Greg Lake does a cool acoustic one that's really cool and melodic called The Sage. But also you've got the Hut of Baba Yaga, the Curse of Baba Yaga, back into the Hut of Baba Yaga, and it finishes with the Great Gates of Kiev. To me, that's pretty much the highlight too, along with The Sage and the old castle. And then for extra measure, they stick on a song called Nutrocker, where they reimagine the Nutcracker from Tchaikovsky. So, is it ridiculous and self-indulgent? Of course, but was it early on in progressive rock, 71? Yeah. So it's just, to me, it's classic, and I'm not saying this is a perfect album, but it's just it's exciting, and this is when I reach for Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I'm reaching for this era and the nutty stuff they did in the beginning. So there you go. At number 5 from 71, they're not a studio album, but the third thing they released, Pictures at an Exhibition. At number 4, by the way, anybody that knows this band, my top 4, it's not a surprise. Their first 4 albums, their first 4 studio albums are clearly all number 1s, and this is why people like Emerson, ELP. It's for their first 4 albums. So it was about impossible for me to rank these top 4 because they're all number 1s. This list moved around. Ultimately, I just kind of said, okay, that's where it is today, and that's what it's going to be. So here we go. Coming in at number 4, their third album, studio album from 72, I've got Trilogy. Just another classic album of them reimagining classical music, but making it exciting and experimental and heavy and unpredictable. The Endless Enigma, part 1 into a fugue that goes back into the Endless Enigma, part 2. It's just an excellent way to start off the album. My favorite song on here is a Greg Lake one, so it's kind of the relief from the craziness that Emerson and Palmer, they all brought it, but Emerson especially and Palmer was a big crazy percussionist too. But you get some relief with From the Beginning, which we heard earlier, which is an awesome Greg Lake type song. He was great at providing that balance for the band. The Sheriff, I don't know. They always have these novelty songs that they would do. It's okay. It's a little bit of Greg Lake. It's a little bit of Keith Emerson doing a novelty. Hoedown is okay. That's another Aaron Copland idea. So Fanfare for the Common Man, now they're doing Hoedown. Side 2, Trilogy, the title track is great. It starts off all quiet and nice, and it's like the first part is a Greg Lake acoustic thing, and then it gets strange and weird and science fiction-y, and that's the Keith Emerson part. So I really dig the title track. Living Sin's all right, and then Abaddon's Bolero is a good way to finish it. So this is a classic. It's ranked 4th, but it's a must-have. It's an essential album for ELP. So if anybody watching knows this, but if you don't know where to start, just start with their first 4 studio albums. This is their third from 72, and it's coming in at number 4, Trilogy. Okay, good timing. Coming in at number 3, I'm sorry. And this, at times, has been my number 1. But we're going with Tarkus. That's what we're hearing now. Massive 20 or 21 minute song. It's my favorite single song they've ever done. It's the name of the album. It's just crazy. It's just 1971, their second album. And they just come out, you think of Yes doing those big, awesome 20-minute songs, but I'm pretty sure that ELP got there first. This came out in 71. I don't think Close to the Edge didn't come out for another year. And certainly not, those songs from Tales from Topographic Oceans or Relayer. So ELP was really, maybe one step ahead of Yes in many ways, and kind of experimental on par with King Crimson. Certainly Greg Lake with the connection. So the song Tarkus is my favorite song they've ever done, and we're hearing it now. But I think the reason this is number 3 is you get to side 2, and suddenly you've just got all these like short tracks, goofy tracks, novelty tracks. What was the, Are You Ready, Eddie? That's just a dumb song. Why did they even put it on here? Bitch's Crystal is good. Jeremy Bender, I mean, it's okay. It's slightly novelty. It's not great. The Only Way is okay. Infinite Space is not bad. Time and a Place is okay. I don't know. My impression of side 2 is that there are 6 short songs. They're all like a minute, 2 minutes, 3 at the most. And they just kind of go by and you're like, that second side just wasn't... Side 1 was so awesome and side 2 is just so forgettable. I think Bitch's Crystal is probably your best track on side 2. So I think it kind of hurts this album a little bit, and it's probably why it's ultimately coming in at number 3, even though it has the best song in their big epic. But it's still an awesome album, and I don't think there's anything on side 2, maybe Are You Ready, Eddie, that's terrible. It's just, it would have been cool if they'd have done like a Yes album and done 2 10-minute songs or something like that were kind of memorable. But there you go, it's still a classic, essential progressive rock album. Forget that it's ELP. But there you go, Tarkus, their second album from '71, coming in at number 3. Wow. Okay, coming in at number 2. I thought this was a number 1. Their 4th album from '73. I've got Brain Salad Surgery, the incredible album cover by H.R. Giger. You can see the beginnings of what would become Alien here. There's the ELP logo that they kind of carried on ever since. You know, it starts off with a rendition of Jerusalem, but then they go into Toccata, which is one of my favorite songs they've ever done. Very experimental. Yeah, look at that label on Atlantic. How cool is that? God. Yeah, Jerusalem was done by some composer named Blake. I don't even know who that is. Toccata. You know, I'm not even sure, I can't even pronounce the guy's name, but Toccata was another classical piece reimagined by the band. Still You Turn Me On is another one of these moments where Greg Lake just drops in and provides awesome relief to all of the insanity. The only track I'm not crazy about is Benny the Bouncer, yet another goofy novelty like ragtime song. But then you get to Carn Evil 9. Carn Evil 9, broken into 4 movements, but really like one big 28 or 29 minute piece. My favorite part is part 1. Part 2 is okay. Part 3 is the one that got play on the radio. And then part 4 is maybe a little less memorable, but just for Toccata, Still You Turn Me On, and Carn Evil 1 Part 1, or Carn Evil 9 Part 1, and then other highlights. I mean, it's their most mature album. It's coming in at number 2, but it's their most mature work. And it was their 4th studio album, 5th album overall in 3 or 4 years. Basically, they put out an album 72 and 71, 72 and 73. Massive tour for this at the height of their powers, but they were also burnt out creatively and just touring all the time. But what an incredible album. So there you go. What else can I say? Brain Salad Surgery coming in at number 2 from my favorite year of music, 1973. Certainly my favorite year for progressive rock. So there can only be one, and it's the only one I don't have vinyl of that I'm ranking. But it's their first album, simply titled Emerson, Lake and Palmer. First thing, maybe not as polished as Brain Salad Surgery or even Trilogy, but everything on here is great. The Barbarian. So my favorite classical composer of all time is Bela Bartok. They rearranged the song The Barbarian by Bartok, and it's just so exciting. The production is good, but it's raw, but it's just so awesome. It's just like unpredictable. I'm not saying they're off the rails, but it's just exciting. It's an exciting listen. Take a Pebble, which is one of these where Greg Lake gives you some balance with this cool acoustic-y thing. Knife Edge, we heard to open this. That's the heavy one. But Three Fates is cool. You know, what... You know, it's oh, Tank. Tank is on here. Tank is another cool experimental one. It's just bombastic. And then it finishes with Lucky Man, which is a radio hit. So another Greg Lake song. So this is experimental, heavy, bombastic. They're doing rearrangements from composers like Bartok, but it's got these cool moments where Greg Lake just gives it that total cool 70s ethereal thing. And you get the catchy song Lucky Man, which even my daughter likes singing that chorus. So So there you go. I've got this version here. I also have Tarkus here. Stephen Wilson remixed the first two, and I got to tell you, Stephen Wilson's the master at these kinds of things. But I would encourage you to get the Stephen Wilson one. I'm not sure who did this Brain Salad Surgery remaster, but it wasn't Stephen Wilson, but it's pretty good as well. But there you go. So coming in at number 1, their first album from 1970, I've got their self-titled Emerson, Lake and Palmer. So real quick, to recap, at number 8, we're going with their last album in the 70s from 78. I've got Love Beach. Number 7, you've got their 7th album, Works, Volume 2 from 77. Then you've got, at number 6, their 6th thing they released from earlier in 77, Works, Volume 1. At number 5, I've got the live album, Pictures at an Exhibition from 71. At number 4, from 72, you've got Trilogy. At number 3, from 71, Tarkus. At number 2, from 73, Brain Salad Surgery. And at number 1, from 70, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Also, this may be essential too. It's triple album, double CD, but in 74 from their 73 tour. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Heavy on the Brain Salad Surgery album. Tarkus. What more can I say? You got Tarkus. All of side 2, and it concludes on side 3, so it's an extended version. Take a Pebble from the first album. You've got Hoedown from Trilogy, Jerusalem, and Toccata from Brain Salad Surgery. Beyond Improvisations, more Take a Pebble conclusion. Jeremy Bender to the Sheriff, and then Carn Evil 9 covers sides 5 and 6. Awesome. I mean, what else do you want? You got Carn Evil 9 in its entirety, Tarkus in its entirety, highlights from the first album and from Trilogy. Yeah, so this is awesome. Also, they did, what was it, In Concert in 79. It came out after the band disbanded, but later on they called it Works Live, because it was supposed to be a double album, and it's a concert in Montreal from 77. And even though that era of the band isn't really one of my favorite eras, the concert itself is still really good, and they have a huge orchestra. Apparently, it was a big show, but it cost them a lot of money, and I think they lost a lot of money doing the show because they had this whole orchestra following them around on this tour. But if you can get In Concert, or better yet, Works Live, you get a lot of cool stuff on there. And if you're tempted to get Works Volume 2, get the 2017 remaster, because not only is it remastered, but they include all of Works Live with Works Volume 2, which makes it very valuable. And then I think, I had this for a while, the Essential Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Didn't really need it because it's pretty heavy on the first, 70 to 73. The peak of their career, 70 to 74. But it does have a little bit of Love Beach in the Works Volumes 1 and Volumes 2. And then it touches on an album they did called Black Moon in 92, which isn't that good, but it's got 2 good songs, and they're both on here, Black Moon and Paper Blood. They did an album after that called In the Hot Seat in 94, which is terrible. And then they did something in the mid-'80s with Cozy Powell called Emerson, Lake and Powell, which I don't care for too much. I guess Carl Palmer was busy in Asia at the time, and they wanted another drummer with the last name that started with P, so it's ELP, Emerson, Lake and Powell. I just thought if I ranked those would be even less, so I just thought I'd focus on their heyday, which was the decade of the 70s. But so there you go. So that is covering the classic era of the 70s of legendary prog rockers, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. So there you go. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time.